People often believe that respect is something you must earn from the world. They believe that if they explain themselves enough, if they stay kind enough, if they tolerate enough, then one day people will finally treat them better. But that day never comes, because people do not treat you based on your intentions. They treat you based on your behavior, not what you promise, not what you hope, not what you deserve, but what you allow. Every relationship in your life is shaped by a silent lesson you are constantly teaching. This is how I treat myself, and this is what I accept from others. You may not realize it, but people are always watching. They watch how quickly you forgive disrespect. They watch how often you explain yourself. They watch how easily you give your time, your energy, your attention. They watch how long you stay where you are not valued. And from these observations, they decide something very important. How seriously should I take this person? This is not cruelty. This is psychology. If you tolerate being ignored, you teach people that your presence is optional. If you laugh off disrespect, you teach people that your boundaries are flexible. If you stay silent when you are mistreated, you teach people that your comfort does not matter. And slowly, without a single confrontation, your position in their mind is decided. Most people never understand why this happens. They ask, why am I always taken for granted? Why do people cross my boundaries? Why am I respected in public but ignored in private? The answer is uncomfortable, because it means looking inward. It means accepting that the way people treat you is often a reflection of the way you treat yourself. How much disrespect you tolerate, how much imbalance you accept, how often you abandon your own needs to keep peace. This video is not here to blame you. It is here to wake you up. Because the moment you understand this principle, everything changes. You stop chasing respect. You stop explaining your worth. You stop trying to be understood by people who benefit from misunderstanding you. Instead, you begin to move differently. You speak less. You tolerate less. You give access more carefully. You walk away sooner, without anger, without drama. And something strange happens. People start treating you differently. Not because you demanded it, not because you argued for it, but because your behavior changed the lesson. In this video, we are going to break down, slowly and clearly, why people treat you according to how you treat yourself. We will explore how self-treatment creates social position, why boundaries work without words, why overgiving destroys respect, and how quiet self-respect reshapes every relationship. By the end of this video, you will understand one powerful truth. You don't need to convince people to respect you. You need to become someone who no longer teaches them to disrespect you. Stay with me. Because once you see this clearly, you will never allow the same treatment again. The psychological rule. People never tell you. There is a psychological rule that silently governs almost every human interaction. It is never taught in schools. It is rarely spoken about openly, and yet it controls how people treat you more than anything else. That rule is simple. People respond to behavior, not explanations. Most people believe that respect is earned through kindness, patience, and understanding. So they try harder, they give more, they tolerate longer, they explain themselves again and again. But what they don't realize is that human beings are not responding to what you intend. They respond to what you consistently demonstrate. Your behavior teaches others how much you value yourself. And people take that lesson seriously. Every time you stay silent when you are disrespected, you are not being patient. You are setting a standard. Every time you overextend yourself to keep others comfortable, you are not being kind. You are communicating availability without value. Every time you accept imbalance to avoid conflict, you are not being mature. You are lowering your position in the relationship. And here is the uncomfortable truth. People are extremely sensitive to self-value signals. They notice how quickly you respond, how easily you agree, how often you compromise, how rarely you push back. They may never say it out loud, but their nervous system registers it instantly. And once a pattern is registered, their behavior adjusts automatically. This is why the same person can be treated with respect in one environment and taken for granted in another. The difference is not personality. The difference is self-treatment. In psychology, this is called behavioral reinforcement. When a behavior has no consequence, it continues. When a boundary is never enforced, it disappears. When disrespect is tolerated, it becomes normalized. People do not wake up one day and decide to disrespect you. They slowly learn that they can, not because they are bad people, but because your behavior made it safe. This is why words alone don't work. You can say, "I don't like being treated this way." But if your behavior stays the same, the message is ignored, because behavior always overrides language. Your nervous system teaches others how to treat you long before your mouth ever does. And here is where most people get trapped. They believe, if I just explain myself better, they will understand. But understanding does not create respect. Boundaries do. Respect is not an emotional decision. It is a conditioned response. People respect what has limits. They value what has structure. They take seriously what is, not endlessly available. This is why confident people rarely explain themselves. You stop sending mixed signals. And mixed signals are what create disrespect. How self-treatment creates your social position. Every environment you enter already has an invisible structure. A structure no one announces. A structure no one votes on. Yet everyone senses it. This structure is social position. Social position is not about titles. It is not about money alone. It is not even about intelligence. It is about how seriously you take yourself and how consistently you show it. People do not place you in a position randomly. They observe first. They observe how you enter a room, how you carry your presence, how you handle interruptions, how you respond to disrespect, how you react when ignored. From these observations, your position is quietly assigned. And here is the part most people never realize. Your social position is not given to you. It is earned through self-treatment. When you treat your time as disposable, others schedule you last. When you treat your energy as unlimited, others drain it freely. When you treat your attention as cheap, others take it without appreciation. This happens automatically, not because people are cruel, but because human beings are wired to conserve effort. They invest where value is clear. They withdraw where value is unclear. Self-treatment clarifies value. This is why two people with the same skills can be treated completely differently. One is listened to, the other is interrupted. One is consulted, the other is ignored. The difference is not talent. The difference is behavioral authority. Behavioral authority comes from alignment. Alignment between what you say, what you tolerate, what you walk away from. When there is misalignment, people sense weakness. For example, if you say you value respect, but stay where you are disrespected, your words lose power. If you say your time matters, but are always available, your schedule loses value. If you say you have standards, but compromise them quickly, your standards disappear. People don't argue with this consciously. They adapt unconsciously. They begin to speak over you, decide for you, delay you, deprioritize you, not out of malice, but because your self-treatment made it acceptable. This is why social position rarely changes through confrontation. It changes through behavioral shift. When you start pausing before responding, choosing where to invest energy, leaving situations that drain you, declining without justification, something powerful happens. The environment recalibrates. People adjust their tone. They become more careful. They become more attentive. Not because you demanded respect, but because your behavior redefined the rules. This is why silence is often more powerful than explanation. Silence creates uncertainty. Uncertainty forces awareness. Awareness changes behavior. People begin to wonder, did I cross a line? Is access no longer guaranteed? Do I need to be more careful here? And in that moment, your position rises. Another critical truth. People respect predictable self-respect. If your boundaries are emotional, people wait them out. If your standards change with mood, people ignore them. But if your self-treatment is calm, consistent, and firm, people adapt quickly. Because consistency creates credibility. Credibility creates authority. Authority creates respect. And respect creates space. This is why the most respected people are rarely the loudest. They don't negotiate presence. They don't chase validation. They don't correct every misunderstanding. They allow their behavior to speak, and behavior speaks fluently. The most important realization in this part is this. You don't rise in social position by convincing people of your worth. You rise by removing behaviors that signal low value. The moment you stop tolerating what drains you, you teach others what you expect. The moment you stop overgiving, you reset balance. The moment you stop chasing approval, you reclaim authority. And authority is felt, not argued. Why self-respect must be built in private. Most people try to build self-respect in public. They want respect to come from recognition, appreciation, validation, approval. They believe that once others see their value, self-respect will automatically follow. This belief is backwards. Self-respect does not begin in how people treat you. It begins in how you treat yourself when no one is watching. In private moments, in quiet decisions, in small choices that never make it to the surface. How you wake up when you don't feel motivated. How you speak to yourself after failure. How you honor your own promises. How you manage your time when no one is demanding it. These moments shape your internal standard, and that internal standard leaks outward, always. People don't respond to confidence alone. They respond to congruence. Congruence means alignment between your inner world and your outer behavior. When you lack self-respect internally, you compensate externally. You explain too much. You seek reassurance. You tolerate imbalance. You accept treatment. You secretly resent. And people feel that. Not intellectually, but emotionally. Your nervous system communicates uncertainty before your words ever do. This is why self-respect built only in public never lasts. You may assert boundaries loudly, but if you violate them privately, they collapse under pressure. True self-respect is quiet. It looks like keeping promises to yourself, saying no without guilt, leaving situations that drain you, choosing discipline over comfort. No one applauds these moments. No one congratulates you, but they shape how you carry yourself. And how you carry yourself determines how others respond. This is why people who truly respect themselves rarely need to demand respect. They move differently. They don't rush. They don't overreact. They don't chase attention. Their calm is not passive, it is grounded. Grounded behavior signals stability. Stability signals strength. And strength commands respect naturally. Another uncomfortable truth. If you don't respect your own time, others won't either. If you cancel on yourself, others will cancel on you. If you betray your own boundaries, others will cross them. Because the relationship you have with yourself sets the template for every other relationship. This is why self-discipline is inseparable from self-respect. Discipline is not punishment, it is self-trust in action. Every time you do what you said you would do, you reinforce internal authority. And internal authority creates external credibility. People sense when you trust yourself. They sense when your decisions are final. They sense when your presence is intentional, and they adjust accordingly. This is also why people who lack self-respect often feel invisible. Not because they are insignificant, but because their internal signals are inconsistent. One day confident, next day apologetic, one day assertive, next day accommodating. Inconsistency confuses others. Confusion leads to disregard. Clarity leads to respect. And clarity comes from internal alignment. You cannot fake this. You cannot shortcut it. Self-respect is built through repetition. Through choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. Through honoring yourself when it would be easier not to. Through walking away when staying would feel familiar. This is why private victories matter more than public praise. Because private victories shape identity, and identity shapes behavior, and behavior teaches people how to treat you. The most important realization of this part is this. If you want people to treat you with respect, you must first become someone who does not abandon themselves in private. Once you stop abandoning yourself, others stop feeling invited to do the same. The power of withdrawing access. One of the most misunderstood concepts in human relationships is the idea of access. Most people believe access is harmless. They think being available makes them kind. They think saying yes makes them valuable. They think staying reachable keeps relationships strong. But psychology tells a different story. Access is not neutral. Access is a signal. It tells people how available you are. how replaceable your time is, how much you value your own presence. When access is unlimited, value quietly disappears. Not because people stop caring, but because the human mind adapts quickly to what is always available. This is why people respect scarcity more than abundance. Not artificial scarcity, not manipulation, but intentional access. When you are always available, people delay responding. People cancel last minute. People speak casually. People assume you will always be there. Your presence becomes expected, not appreciated. And expectation kills respect. Withdrawing access is not punishment, it is recalibration. It is the moment you quietly say, my time is not automatic. My energy is not unlimited. My presence must be earned. This does not require announcements. It does not require confrontation. It does not require explanation. It requires behavioral change. You stop responding immediately. You stop rearranging your life to accommodate others. You stop showing up where effort is not reciprocated. And something interesting happens. People begin to notice, not because you complained, but because the pattern changed. Human beings are extremely sensitive to pattern disruption. When you remove easy access, you create psychological awareness. People begin to wonder, why is this person less available? Did I take them for granted? Do I need to be more respectful? That internal questioning shifts behavior. This is why withdrawing access works even when nothing is said. Because silence forces interpretation, and interpretation creates adjustment. Many people fear withdrawing access because they confuse it with rejection. They worry, what if people leave? What if I lose connections? What if I seem cold? But this fear reveals something important. It reveals that the relationship may be built on convenience, not respect. Healthy relationships survive boundaries. Unhealthy ones resist them. Withdrawing access filters relationships. It removes those who were only present because access was easy, and it strengthens relationships that are based on mutual respect. Another important truth. When you withdraw access calmly without emotional charge, it communicates strength. No anger, no drama, no explanations. Just change. This signals self-control, and self-control is deeply respected. People instinctively respect those who do not need constant validation, constant engagement, constant reassurance. This is why people who value themselves rarely feel the need to chase. They allow others to meet them at their level. This is not arrogance, this is alignment. Your availability should match effort, consistency, respect. When those are missing, access should decrease. Not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. Another psychological effect of withdrawing access is emotional regulation. When you are always available, others regulate their emotions through you. They vent, they unload, they depend. This creates imbalance. Withdrawing access restores balance. It forces people to manage themselves. It forces accountability. It forces maturity. And mature behavior invites respect. One of the strongest signals you can send is being selective without being hostile. You don't say you don't deserve me. You simply stop acting like everyone does. That quiet selectivity changes perception more than any speech ever could. The most important realization in this part is this. People don't value you more because you give them more access. They value you more when access reflects self-respect. The moment your presence becomes intentional, people start treating it as valuable. And once people value your presence, their behavior changes naturally. Why? Over-explaining destroys respect. Over-explaining feels polite. It feels mature. It feels like you are being reasonable. But psychologically, it sends the opposite message. When you over-explain, you are not adding clarity. You are revealing uncertainty. You are saying, without realizing it, I need you to agree with me for my decision to feel valid. Human beings do not respect uncertainty and authority. They sense it immediately. Every time you justify your boundaries too much, every time you explain your decisions emotionally, every time you defend your choices longer than necessary, you are teaching people something dangerous. My decisions are negotiable, and negotiable decisions invite pressure. Most people don't consciously decide to push your boundaries. They simply feel that they Can. Because your explanations signal flexibility. Confidence does not come from having perfect reasons. It comes from finality. People respect decisions that feel settled. Notice how people react differently to "I'm not available" versus "I'm not available because I've been really busy lately, and I also have some things going on, and I hope you understand." The first communicates clarity. The second communicates insecurity. The difference is not politeness. The difference is authority. Over-explaining often comes from fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of conflict. Fear of rejection. But that fear leaks into your tone, and people respond to tone more than content. When you explain too much, people start listening less. Because the human brain interprets excess explanation as weakness, not morally. Psychologically, it triggers a question in their mind. Why do they feel the need to convince me? And once that question appears, respect drops. This is why powerful people speak less. Not because they are cold, but because their internal alignment makes explanation unnecessary. They are not trying to manage perception. They are grounded in decision. Another uncomfortable truth. Over-explaining teaches people to question you. If every decision requires justification, people learn that they can debate your boundaries. They interrupt, they negotiate, they test. Not because they are rude, but because your behavior invited it. Respect grows where consistency exists. When your no is calm and short, people learn to accept it. When your yes is intentional, people value it. But when every answer comes with emotional reasoning, people stop taking the answer seriously and start focusing on the emotion behind it. This is why over-explaining is exhausting. It places you in a defensive position, even when you've done nothing wrong. And defense always signals lower ground. Self-respect does not require explanation. It requires alignment. Aligned people say less, move slower, react calmly, stand by decisions, and this calm finality reshapes behavior around them. People stop pushing, people stop testing, people stop assuming access. Not because you argued, but because you stop teaching them that arguments work. One of the strongest shifts you can make is this. Replace explanation with presence. Short answers, neutral tone, no emotional justification. Not rude, not aggressive. Just clear. Clarity makes people uncomfortable at first, especially those who benefited from your over-explaining. But discomfort is temporary, respect is lasting. The most important realization of this part is this. You don't need better reasons. You need stronger self-trust. When you trust yourself, your words carry weight. And when your words carry weight, people listen, even when you say very little. How discipline shapes how people see you. Discipline is one of the most misunderstood forces in human behavior. Most people think discipline is personal. Something you do for yourself, something private that no one notices. This is only half true. Discipline is deeply visible, even when you never talk about it. People sense discipline before they see results. They sense it in how you manage your time, how you respond emotionally, how consistent your behavior is, how predictable your standards are. Discipline creates something powerful in the human mind, trust without explanation. When you are disciplined, people know what to expect from you, and predictability builds psychological safety. Psychological safety builds respect. This is why disciplined people are taken seriously, even when they speak less. They don't react impulsively. They don't overcommit emotionally. They don't change direction every time circumstances shift. Their behavior feels grounded, and grounded behavior communicates authority. Authority does not come from control. It comes from self-regulation. People instinctively respect those who can regulate their impulses, their emotions, and their decisions. Because self-regulation signals maturity. Maturity signals leadership. Another important effect of discipline is consistency. Consistency removes confusion. When people know that, your yes means yes. Your no means no. Your boundaries don't fluctuate. They stop testing you. Testing happens when people sense inconsistency. They push to see what will change. But discipline eliminates that curiosity. It tells others this person knows themselves. And self-knowledge is rare. This is why people with discipline are often described as intense, serious, or focused. Not because they are harsh, but because their energy is contained. Contained energy feels powerful. Scattered energy feels weak. This is also why disciplined people often make others uncomfortable, because discipline exposes lack of discipline. Your calm highlights their chaos. Your structure highlights their impulsiveness. Your focus highlights their distraction. And instead of rising to your level, some people react defensively. They label discipline as rigid, boring, extreme, but these labels are not truth. They are coping mechanisms. Because acknowledging discipline would require personal responsibility. Another truth most people avoid: discipline creates self-trust. Every time you follow through, you reinforce your internal authority. And internal authority leaks outward. People sense when you trust yourself. They sense when your decisions are final. They sense when your boundaries are not emotional. This is why disciplined people rarely feel the need to prove themselves. They don't seek validation. They don't overperform for approval. They don't explain their process. They let results accumulate quietly, and accumulation changes perception. Over time, people stop questioning you. They stop doubting you. They stop interrupting you, because your behavior has earned credibility. Discipline also protects your nervous system. When you live without discipline, you are reactive. You respond to moods. You respond to pressure. You respond to urgency. Reactive people feel unstable, and instability invites disrespect. Discipline replaces reaction with response. Response is calm. Response is measured. Response feels intentional. And intentional behavior commands respect. The most important realization of this part is this: people don't respect discipline because it looks impressive. They respect it because it feels reliable. Reliability builds trust. Trust builds respect. Respect reshapes relationships. And all of it begins with how consistently you treat yourself. Why tolerating disrespect teaches others what is allowed. Disrespect does not begin loudly. It begins quietly, in small moments, in subtle comments, in ignored boundaries, in jokes that don't feel like jokes. Most people don't confront disrespect when it first appears. They tell themselves, it's not a big deal. They didn't mean it. I don't want to create tension. But psychology does not care about intention. It responds to pattern. Every time you tolerate disrespect, you are not choosing peace. You are setting a precedent. Human beings learn faster from behavior than from words. If a behavior has no consequence, the nervous system registers it as safe. And what feels safe gets repeated. This is why disrespect escalates over time. It starts as interruptions, dismissive tone, delayed responses, and slowly turns into being taken for granted, being ignored, being spoken over. Not because people suddenly change, but because they learned what you would tolerate. Tolerance teaches. Silence teaches. Laughing it off teaches. Staying teaches. This is the part most people don't want to accept. Disrespect continues, not because people are cruel, but because it is unconsciously permitted. This does not mean you are weak, it means you are human. Humans avoid conflict instinctively. We seek belonging, we fear rejection. So we sacrifice boundaries for comfort. But comfort has a cost. When you tolerate disrespect to keep peace, you trade self-respect for short-term calm. And people feel that trade immediately. They may not say it, but they sense a shift in power. Power is not about dominance. It is about limits. Where limits disappear, power shifts away from you. This is why respectful people often appear firm, not aggressive, not rude, just firm. They don't react emotionally. They don't lecture. They don't explode. They respond early. Early response prevents escalation. Late response feels dramatic. Most people wait too long. They let discomfort accumulate. Then one day they explode. And when that happens, others feel confused, because the behavior was tolerated for so long. This is why early boundaries matter. Not loud boundaries, not angry boundaries, but consistent boundaries. A calm no. A pause instead of compliance. A withdrawal instead of argument. These small responses teach faster than confrontation. Another important truth: people treat you the way they treat themselves. Those who lack self-respect often project it onto others. But projection only works where it is accepted. If you don't interrupt disrespect early, people assume compatibility. They think this behavior works here, and they adjust accordingly. This is also why some people respect you immediately, while others test you repeatedly. The testers are not evil, they are checking limits, and limits are only real when enforced. Not once, not emotionally, but consistently. Consistency is what turns boundaries into identity. This is why tolerating disrespect is dangerous. Not because it hurts your feelings, but because it reshapes your position. People stop checking in. They stop considering your comfort. They stop treating your presence as valuable. And once that perception forms, it is difficult to reverse. Not impossible, but costly. The earlier you respond, the less correction is needed. The most important realization of this part is this. Every time you tolerate disrespect, you are teaching people how little your comfort matters. And every time you respond calmly and early, you teach people something else. This behavior does not belong here. That lesson repeated changes everything. The power of walking away without drama. Most people believe power comes from confrontation. They think respect is earned by arguing, by explaining, by defending themselves loudly. But psychology reveals a different truth. The strongest signal of self-respect is not how you react. It is what you no longer engage with. Walking away without drama is one of the clearest messages the human mind understands. It says, "This no longer deserves my energy. This no longer has access to me. This is not worth explaining." And it says it without hostility. Hostility keeps you emotionally tied. Drama keeps you reactive. Explanation keeps you seeking approval. Walking away does none of these. It creates finality. Finality forces reality. When you leave calmly, without anger, without speeches, without ultimatums, you remove yourself from the emotional equation. And this creates psychological impact. People expect reaction. They expect justification. They expect emotional negotiation. When none comes, their nervous system is disrupted. They are forced to interpret your silence. And silence, when intentional, is louder than confrontation. This is why calm withdrawal changes behavior faster than arguments. Arguments invite debate. Silence invites reflection. Another important truth. Walking away without drama is not avoidance. It is selection. You are selecting peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, alignment over attachment. People often fear walking away because they confuse it with weakness. They worry, what if people think I lost? What if they think I couldn't handle it? But psychologically, people don't respect those who endure everything. They respect those who choose themselves. Endurance without boundaries feels desperate. Boundaries without drama feel powerful. This is why emotionally mature people rarely explain their exits. They don't announce, they don't threaten, they don't create scenes. They simply change behavior. They stop responding, they stop showing up, they stop investing. And this behavioral shift forces others to reassess the dynamic. Not because you demanded change, but because the old pattern no longer works. Another reason walking away is powerful is that it removes emotional reward. Many forms of disrespect continue because they create reaction. Reaction feeds behavior. When you react emotionally, you reward the pattern. When you withdraw calmly, you starve it. This is basic behavioral psychology. What is not reinforced eventually fades. Walking away without drama is the removal of reinforcement. This is why some people suddenly change after you stop engaging. Not because they became better people, but because the behavior stopped working. Another uncomfortable realization. People respect exits more than explanations. Explanations keep you present. Exits redefine your absence. Absence is felt. Absence is noticed. Absence forces recalibration. This is also why walking away often creates delayed respect. People may not react immediately. They may not apologize. They may not reach out. But internally, their perception shifts. They realize, this person does not depend on my validation. This person does not need to be understood to move on. This person values themselves. And that realization lingers. The most important realization of this part is this. You don't teach people how to treat you. by what you tolerate loudly, but by what you quietly remove yourself from. Walking away without drama is not cold, it is clear. And clarity is what ultimately changes behavior, becoming someone people naturally respect. At some point, a shift must happen, not outside you, but within you. This shift is not loud, it is not dramatic, it does not announce itself. But once it happens, everything around you changes. You stop asking, why do people treat me this way? And you start asking, what am I teaching people about myself? This is the moment self-respect becomes embodied, not discussed. You no longer rely on rules, speeches, or reactions. Your behavior becomes the message. You move with clarity, you speak with intention, you respond instead of react. And people feel it, not because you became intimidating, but because you became settled. Settled people don't seek approval, they don't negotiate boundaries, they don't chase understanding. They trust their inner standard, and inner standards create outer authority. This is the final transformation. You stop trying to be respected and become someone whose behavior requires respect. When you treat your time as valuable, people stop wasting it. When you treat your energy as limited, people stop draining it. When you treat your presence as intentional, people stop taking it for granted. This is not magic, this is conditioning. Human beings adapt to clarity. Another important realization happens here. You stop needing closure. You no longer demand explanations. You no longer wait for apologies. You no longer need people to admit they were wrong, because your peace no longer depends on their awareness. This is emotional independence, and emotional independence is deeply respected. People feel safe around those who are not emotionally needy. They feel grounded around those who are not reactive. They feel cautious around those who are not easily accessible. Not fear, respectful caution. This is why the final shift is quiet. You don't change to prove a point. You change to protect alignment. You stop explaining your growth. You stop justifying your standards. You stop apologizing for clarity. And slowly the world responds. Some people fall away. Some people adjust. Some people rise to meet you. All of these outcomes are correct. Because the goal was never to keep everyone. The goal was to stop abandoning yourself. This is the final truth of the entire video. People treat you according to how you treat yourself. Because your self-treatment is the clearest signal of your value. Not what you say, not what you want, not what you deserve. What you demonstrate daily. When you demonstrate self-respect, disrespect loses access. Manipulation loses leverage. Confusion loses power, and what remains is clarity, peace, and aligned connection. You don't need to demand better treatment. You need to become unavailable to lesser treatment. Once you do, people don't need to be taught. They adjust, and that is when respect stops being something you chase and becomes something you naturally receive.